Thank you very much for your very, very kind and generous introduction, Anik. I'm very honored to be here sharing my research and work with the colleagues from far and near. And thank you for inviting me, Anik, for also including me in this wonderful series so that we can have different perspectives to look at language policy across different settings. The topic and data are generated from my early work in Canada and Singapore. Some data are based on family language policy project in China, and some are from the just finished project funded by ESRC. So we look at families in different ethnic communities and different countries and different settings, and look at how they negotiate, families negotiate language and literacy practices, and how they deal with multiple languages in their everyday life. Okay. And today I will talk about the role of a parental language ideology and practices in the process of their children's multilingual development. Much of the work I present here is underpinned by the framework of Spolsky. So I will move on to my next. Yeah. So as we all know that the field has really flourished in recent years, and different research methods and different theories have been used to look at migration and children's language development. So what I want to look at is that how can we advance the field of family language policy in the future, and how can family language policy enhance our understanding of multilingual children's language development? Who will benefit from the field, and in what ways will they benefit from the field? Because we have done so much in recent years. And even though studies have progressed so much, but we still have some burning questions that we want to ask. What types of family language policy promote and discourage multilingual development? What kind of social culture and linguistic milieu in communities support social cohesion and identity construction? And what policies at educational and national levels that provide conducive environments for heritage language maintenance and literacy development? So what I'm going to do is to look at, to look at what we have achieved so far by looking at family types and the major contributions and methodology used in the field. As we all know, that family language policy has gone through 4 phases, okay? And we are currently now in the beginning of 4th or 5th phase, I would say. So family language policy has slowly moved away from elite bilingualism to bilingual heritage language and mainstream language development, as well as multilingualism. So currently, we moved also away from Western families, Western-based families, and looking at different languages, not only English, and studies like recently, for example, Higgins and Fogel's book, that they included diversified family types, including immigrant families, indigenous families, adopted extended families, and multi-sited transnational families, and as well as divorced single parents families. So the diversified families are increasingly multiple and interesting, and looking at some of the languages are not commonly used in families, including indigenous language. And we have also seen endangered language communities are coming into the picture of a family language policy research. So then we also seen family language policy has examined, the studies has examined various aspects of family language policy, including why different values are ascribed to different languages, how parents view bilingualism from social, cultural, emotional, and cognitive perspectives in studies such as myself, King, and Paulanko, Tannenbaum, all these very interesting studies looking at why parents ascribe different values to languages and what kinds of a family literacy environment and what forms of parental capital are likely to promote bilingualism. This studies has expanded in the working of the home domain into the domain of school to understand the conflicting demands of a state-controlled education on the one hand, and the intergenerational transmission of a heritage language on the other. Studies have also looked at new speakers, work of such as Nandi, and minority languages such as Lakshmi, and all those new researchers have done wonderful job to look at how languages are ordered hierarchically, and what roles language practices play in the process of language change. Okay, here I am also looking at the different methodologies that have been used. We have seen both quantitative and qualitative or interpretive studies from the field, such as Mila Schwartz's work, Savinch's work looking at language outcome and family language policy, how family language policy actually played a role in children's language outcome. And we have also qualitative interpretive methods used by Palvenian and many more. And then and most of the studies we have seen currently or recently is actually qualitative in nature. We've also seen social linguistic ethnography study represented by Kanagaraga and Cassie Smith Christmas, and some more recent, scholars, young scholars, and many more special issues have also appeared in journals of multilingual and multicultural development. So all these studies have used basically the Spassky's theoretical framework for the three components, looking at the three components of a language policy. But more theoretical lenses have also been used, such as the Bourdieu's theory of habitus and social culture theory and agency and governmentality to understand the different internal and external factors, how these factors influence the decision-making process of families. What I'm going to do in the following slides is to look at the studies, particularly parental beliefs and goals and expectations in shaping their children's language learning process, by looking at my studies. Most of the studies are mine, of course, based on my work in Canada, Singapore, China, and UK. Just to summarize what has been done in the field, or what I have done, and I just want to share this with the colleagues. When we talk about parental beliefs, and we want to look at parental impact beliefs about their children's ability, whether they can raise and responsible for their children's bilingual development. And this can be a decisive factor in forming family language policy at micro level. So this is what de Hoover called impact beliefs, where parents see themselves as more or less capable or responsible for raising bilingual children. And such micro level beliefs are instantiated through parental expectations. And these expectations are very often derived from their learning and migration experiences. Quite many studies have looked at these impact beliefs. For example, Perez Bears' study looked at the San Lucas speakers in Mexico and California, and the parents don't believe that they are able to shape their children's language outcome because the children are born in different places. Whereas my study in Canada showed very different outcome, because the parents, or Chinese parents, they tend to have very, very strong beliefs about providing linguistic conditions for their children. So their expectations are quite high for their children. So what I'm going to show next is my study in Canada. So my early studies in Canada have demonstrated that Chinese immigrant parents hold very strong impact beliefs about their ability in shaping their children's linguistic future. So this is illustrated by the perceptions of, their perceptions of languages and the languages they have in their particular context. So if we look at this quote, that's an interview that I had with one of the parents, and she said, language is like a door that enable you to reach the world. When you learn one language, you get to know one part of the world. When you learn other languages, you will get an opportunity to know other parts of the world. It is like windows opening up to you one by one. You can learn many things and acquire knowledge through languages. So in this meaningful and expressive metaphor, and the parent actually is describing language as a window to the world, which captures the essence of the powerful role languages play in our life. She also acknowledges that the possession of language equals possession of knowledge. So this powerful belief can be, and is very often, transformed in active language practices, explicitly or implicitly. Her statement provides a window into parents' language ideology and indicates why parents emphasize intervention in their children's bilingual or multilingual development. And my study in Canada also shows that language has a particular economic advantage if they learn the language. In this quote interview, the parents said, we, of course, also have to consider the practical value of languages. I often tell my daughter that the Chinese are the third biggest population in Quebec. If you want to be a doctor and if you know Chinese, French, and English, you will be able to deal with the parents, you will be able to deal with the patients from China, Quebec, and people who speak English. So as language ideology is context specific and located within the social culture environment, language policy decisions are inextricably separate from the social culture context in which the families are established. In Quebec, French language proficiency can facilitate access, and lack of such proficiency can impact access to further personal economic development. The utility and value of languages are clearly presented in the parental perceptions of the market values. Most of the parents consider French an indispensable tool when living in Quebec. This is also the reality they have to face once they decide to stay in Quebec. Okay, so, and many parents also see there is a direct link between language and identity. As one of the parents, Mrs. Lin, said, why our kids have to learn Chinese? It seems such a natural thing. It is like the children are Chinese. If they don't learn some Chinese, there will be a great pity. I think when they grow up to a certain age, they must ask, who am I? For instance, they live in a society with black, white, and many other different races. It is very obvious here that you will definitely ask this question, who you are yourself. So when this question is asked, that if you know Chinese, you have a tool and a means, then you can immediately get to the answer, which can deepen your understanding of yourself. So this is clearly showing that language is a symbolic representation, and identity marker is most significant culture and ethnic feature indicated in the parental beliefs about language. So their beliefs are in line with those many language theories who consider identities are constructed, defined, and framed by the language we use, and hold that language provide the most basic capital for membership in communities, such as work from Bolton, Goopens, and G, and many more. Okay. So from these three quotes, we can see languages are clearly ranked and hierarchically ordered, which is clearly reflected from their practices and expectations. Although language provides access to knowledge, resources, and economic benefits, language is also seen hierarchically, because they are based on the parents' past experience when they encounter difficulties and problems in getting a good job and getting integrated in the mainstream society. So this has been a powerful drive for parents to provide necessary education, either from home or interventions and management for providing linguistic conditions for their children. So now I'm going to share some of the data, not very much, from my current project, which I worked with Professor Li Wei and Zhu Hua. So we want to see basically from the project how language ideologies are manifested in language practices. So the central point for us is to understand how family members make sense of the multiple languages they use in their everyday life, and what decisions they have to make with regard to which languages they will maintain and which languages they will have to let go. So what I'm going to do now, is to share a case. So what we call the Wei Wei or Mei Mei, I call them interchangeably. Mei Mei means little sister. Wei Wei is her name. Okay. So here, Wei Wei is 8 years old, and she was born in England to Chinese parents. She's a bilingual first language speaker, and she is studying in Birmingham, a mainstream school in English, but she also learns Mandarin Chinese weekly at a community school. Although her parents emphasize Chinese education, but most of her resources are in English, and most of her books are in English. What happens with the Wei Wei or Mei Mei is when she was 2 years old, she was going to attend a daycare or nursery in a local nursery school because her parents had to work. So the family language policy by then was Chinese dominant language policy. I mean, they do use English from time to time, but predominantly everyone used the Chinese in the family. And Mei Mei also has a big sister who speaks very good Chinese and also literate in Chinese. So, but when the parents decide to send her to daycare, they worried about how Mei Mei can communicate with the teachers and other children. So the parents said, we became very worried about Mei Mei's communication skills at the nursery, especially when the teacher said that Mei Mei hardly spoke at all, but she was very bubbly at home, always talking nonstop. We were so concerned. And this was clearly a language issue. So that's why we decided to change our home language into English. Then later on, English was used more and more. Then Mei Mei's Chinese became less developed. Now she speaks Chinese like a foreigner. I have some videos that demonstrate that Mei Mei speak Mandarin with a really accent, and her Chinese development went downwards very, very fast. Nowadays, she can hardly use Chinese to talk with the grandparents. And of course, the parents realize the problem with her Chinese language. They want to revitalize the family language policy or revert family language policy back to Chinese, but it's very, very difficult because once the pattern has been established, the habit has been done or established, and it's very, very difficult to change. So, which is also illustrated from her many texts with the parents. And you can see Mei Mei start in her WhatsApp to her, it's called WhatsApp, yeah, WhatsApp to her mother in English, and she write capital letters there, said, "Where are you? I'm sad and I miss you." So she's using capital letters to emphasize that her emotion to her mother, and her mother also answered in English. She said, "Oh my dear, oh dear, mommy is on my way home, and see you in a bit." So these exchanges shows the habits or family language policy established over the years. Here you can see that mom wants to change the language policy, revert back to Chinese, but it's very difficult. So mom started with saying, "Good morning, Mei Mei," and she started with the Chinese, but she always add English at the bottom. So repeat the same message in English because Mei Mei can't read too much. So what happens in this instance showed, go back, show that, family language policy is actually plays a decisive role in children's language development. Once you once you establish habituous practice, and it's very, very difficult to go back or to learn another language. So the patterns or practices, language use should be established once the children are still young. So then they will continue to use this, to continue with the patterns of language use in the family, which I can demonstrate from my studies in the following cases that in Singapore. Okay, so no, this is in China. I'm sorry, I mixed up. Okay, so the next example to show is that how family language policy has been established in China, and where language, where most Chinese families use two languages, you know, 方言, or what you call it, dialects, and 普通话, which is Mandarin. Here you can see, because parents believe is very, very powerful. And once they believe something, they will instantiate it or implement it, what they believe in families. So let's have a look at this interview that we did with the one of the parents. He said, with regard to learning whether they should carry on with the 方言 spoken at home or just learn 普通话, which is the official language, or it's also called 普通话. 普通话 means the common language, which is used as a medium instruction in schools and in, you know, broadcast and on TV and public domains everywhere. So the parents said, my educational framework is to follow its natural path. And he emphasized natural path. So 普通话 is used in kindergarten, then the son will learn 普通话. In any ways, 普通话 is certainly the main communication language in this country. So we should learn both languages, 普通话 and 方言, or rather, there is no need to learn neither languages because you live in this environment, you learn it naturally. From from a future perspective, 普通话 would be much more suitable for the younger generation's future advancement. He may choose to work somewhere else or study somewhere else if there are possibilities that he may consider to travel outside the city. It's best that he should use more 普通话. So here in this excerpt, the parents confirm 普通话's versatility by its use in various domains, such as schools, you know, work and future education. Although he acknowledged that both 普通话 and 方言 can be learned in a natural environment, his construction of agency was established by his explicit beliefs that 普通话 would be much more suitable for the younger generation's future advancement. While his belief about language learning seems to be derived from Darwin's natural selection theory, this conviction does not take into consideration the seemingly natural linguistic environment that is driven by ideological positions, social preferences, and economic advantages. In other words, 方言 and 普通话 were perceived hierarchically based on their functional values, but not on their symbolic and emotional values for intergenerational transmission, which has been identified in other contexts. So this is very striking, you know, we talk about natural environment. is there such a thing called natural environment? Isn't that environment are all constructed by us, by human beings, by families, and by members of the families? Okay, so, and I will continue to show this ideological perceptions, how it is translated into language practices in families, very ordinary family talk. Okay, this is a family consists of, in this dialogue, only 3 members, but the family actually is an extended family. The grandparents live together with the family. So, and then this is a dialogue about having dinner, and the grandparents, grandmother, she can only speak dialect. So in this family, and they have this kind of a parallel moves in their dialogue. So grandma always speak Fangyan, and then the child, the son, Xiao, always speak Mandarin, and the mother and the father use Fangyan and Putonghua in between. And so let's have a look at this dialogue. Right? So the grandma start asking, so how about we have steamed fish this evening? Because we haven't really had fish for a while. And she's directing her conversation to Xiao, but the child didn't really have any response, either because he's not paying attention, or he just simply doesn't care. So the mother jumped in, because the mother felt, he's a little bit disrespectful. So the mother said, hey, Baobei, grandma is asking what to have for dinner. How about steamed fish? And the child, without lifting his head, and said, no fish, too much bone, too many bones. So then the mother translate what Baobei has said to the grandmother by using Fangyan. Okay, and he said, now no fish, he doesn't want to have a fish. How about we have some beef, directly from the market? It's convenient and quick. And then the grandmother continued with Fangyan and said, okay, if you want to fish, if you want beef, then we'll have a beef. So you can see in this dialogue, there both Fangyan and Putonghua are taking place. What happens was that although there were parallel moves, the parents, especially mother, act as a go-between or broker, shifting frequently from Fangyan to Putonghua. And during this process, medium translation took place, or you can say translation took place. When grandma asked about Bei in Fangyan about the choice and proposed, and the mother proposed fish, and the mother translated the question into Putonghua when she saw no responses. It's not because the child, Baobei, doesn't really understand what the grandmother says, but the mother trying to signal the child that do not speak Fangyan, but using Putonghua in this dialogue. So the whole intergenerational transmission is kind of ceased because the mother is doing this translation back and forth. Okay. This is a typical situation in many Chinese families in China. So that's why Fangyan is slowly lost in the next generation. And there were studies showing that the younger generation almost stopped using Fangyan, which is, of course, not totally aligned with the policy at the government level, because the policy says they still cherish Fangyan, but Fangyan is not used as medium instruction, and Putonghua is emphasized as the tool for unite the country. So maybe that's the fundamental issue in Chinese situation. So we can see that from this dialogue and the interviews in Chinese context, the cultural and emotional detachment from Fangyan can be clearly seen. Okay, and they are absent from parental discourses. This is in contrast to other research on minority languages and on minority language shift, where there is often a tension between parental desires to maintain heritage language for cultural and emotional purpose, and the practical reality of linguistic capital of mainstream languages in a given society. And there are many studies of showing this. So the linguistic hierarchy is a strong factor influencing parental agency, and language instrumentality determines, in this case, in Chinese case, the family language policy. Okay, so next I'm showing studies, a few cases in Singapore, especially how language practices are carried on or carried out in families. I will demonstrate with the 3 families, all have different family language policy. One family A has this conscious bilingual policy, and family B has an implicit policy, or rather unreflective language policy, and family C has this laissez-faire monolingual English policy. I will start by showing an example in family A, where this is a homework session. The parents was doing homework together and practicing English oral exercise. I need to mention that both parents are English and Chinese bilingual and very proficient. They both speak and use language on daily basis at work and at home. So their English is very good. This is just to say that, not because they won't be able to use English, they can use English quite well. The dialogue goes, when the son needs to practice his oral test. So the mother says, I gave you this picture. You look at the picture and then you need to describe the picture. That's the test for their oral exam. So the mother starts saying, if you want to introduce, this is a bookstore, to other people, how many ways can you introduce? And the son says, this is a bookshop. It's one way. And the mother said, yes, this is the easiest. And because you are given this picture, then during the test, you may say, this picture is a bookstore. This picture is about. So the conversation goes on. And the mother is using Chinese to coach the child how to do the test. So quite interesting, many different things happen in this very simple dialogue. So the child wants to translate, and the mother said, if you translate word by word, and how would you say it? And the child starts saying the picture now. To say describe, how do you say describe in English? Wait, it doesn't mean that he doesn't know. Then the mother provide the word for him. So this picture describe a bookshop, and the mother didn't really point out his error, a mistake, but instead she said, it sounds a bit weird. Okay. It sounds a little bit not, incorrect. And so the child immediately corrected his own mistakes by saying the bookshop is describing a no, and back and forth and with false start. He tried a few times. And what is very interesting from this dialogue, although it's very ordinary everyday dialogue, but it shows several things. The mother is trying to activate the child's prior knowledge in English. Okay, so what you have done before. And the mother also probing multiple possibilities for introduction. And the mother also provide the needed grammatical help and vocabulary, and also allows the child for self-correction. So there were many different things happening in this conversation, and showing the deliberate or a very conscious family language policy in this family. The next family is what I called unreflective family policy, where a child, D2, is daughter 2, come home and showing the parents what she has done in school. So she started by saying, teacher Alice taught me how to make the tree. And the mother emphasized, you don't say, in Chinese, we have a different measure words. So you use the wrong words. It's make the tree, not make a tree. And then also provide her with the correct words for family tree in Chinese. But then the child continued, the conversation continued. If you look at line 9, the child is describing how to make the tree. And in this dialogue, in this short description, and she said she used many English content words. And she said, then use glue, then paste law, and then the tree is made by big tissue papers, not like this thin one, and then you color it with brown color and use crayon. So what happened in this conversation is that the mother acknowledges her comprehension by asking D2 how to make a family tree. Here she repeats the D2's mode using multiple content words in utterances. Notably, in her last sentence in turn 9, she not only used content words brown color and crayon, she also builds up the sentence using English grammatical structure by placing the adverbial phrase at the end. So the whole conversation is not really a reflexive family language policy, because the parents didn't really provide more language for the child to develop a proper vocabulary. So language policy or language practice in this context just carry on without efforts, and the parallel move and the permission of use different codes just carry on in this family, and showing, showing that, intergeneration transmission can be stopped by mixing all the languages. I mean, from a multilingual perspective, maybe this is not wrong, but from a heritage language maintenance perspective, you are losing the child, because if you don't really know how to say use glue in Chinese, you don't know how to say paste, and you don't really know how to say tissue paper in Chinese, and then your productive language will not be developed, and the bilingual child you wish or you desire to raise will not become a reality. Okay, so, and let's have a look at the last example that I'm going to show. Here, this is the third type, laissez-faire family. And the child is showing the parents what he is going to do about his Chinese homework, which is about Monkey King. It's a legendary story, I mean, classical literature for children in China. And we talk about the Monkey King. And there are several characteristics in this story. The child said, I will take Sun Wukong, Sha Zeng, and Bai Ma. Those are the characters in the story. And then the mother asked why, and the child gave an example on why, or the rationale for his choice. So he said, Sha Zeng, because he can become a shark. You know, Sha Zeng can really turn into a shark, you know that. So all the conversation, you can see there are lots of Chinese words in between, but with a closer examination, you find all the Chinese that the child included in the dialogue are the characters' names. So the entire conversation is about, it's in English, structure is in English, only content characters are inserted in English conversation. The mother didn't really do anything to intervene and didn't really probe the child to give more details, didn't really reconfirm they didn't really change the family language policy and just allowing such a conversation going on and on. So this shows the parents' attitude as a laissez-faire attitude, and it's rather English dominant in this family, which to a certain extent understandable, because in Singapore, although there were 4 official languages, in their language, in their policy, but English is the language in school, language in medium instruction in schools across all subjects on all levels, both in primary school, secondary school, and at university. So the role of English plays such a determinative role in family language policy in this family. So you can see clearly, although it is a laissez-faire policy, but it's also sort of an implicit language policy emphasizing the importance of English in the society. Okay. I'm going to finish my talk very soon. So from what we can see, the early, excerpts and also the late excerpt, we can see that the notion of ideology has established clearly as the underlying forces for language policy. So within a given society of a family, however, there can be many ideologies which agree or disagree with each other, sometimes causing conflicting views about languages and leading to contradictory language practices and managed interventions. So language policy do not always lead to the desired language outcome, and environment does not guarantee language outcome, and language ideologies and practices can be incongruent. Okay, so this will be my last slides. Here we are going to throw back some questions to you without any concrete summaries, because what we really want to continue with the field is to understand how should parents be informed about, or rather is to ask, how should parents be informed about the various effects of bilingualism with regard to cognitive or social cultural development? How should interactions among different policy levels, that is state level, institutional level, and family level, be established to promote bilingualism or multilingualism? What should be done in public discourse to inform and influence parental ideology? And what linguistic mechanism should parents provide to ensure bilingual or multilingual development? Thank you very much. So there are some references here. Now I will stop sharing.